Hey guys, this is Pastor. Have you seen this? Or hey Pastor, have you seen this? I still don't know what we're calling
I
it.
think we're leaving off the hay.
Oh, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're cutting off the hay because hay's for horses.
That's right.
But me and Rick are both here, and we're going to comment on a video. And basically, this video comes from one of our other pastors. Have you seen this? Kind of a piggyback off of that. So we had a guy that was last pastor. Have you seen this? Rick was really talking about the Trinity, and he was really trying to explain that Jesus and the Father are one, and what does that mean? And there was some pushback on that Jesus and the Father are not actually one.
Right.
Or that when they say
didn't
Jesus,
mean that.
or he didn't mean that, right? And so we have a video that kind of counters that argument.
Yeah.
And so we want to kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
Is that cool? So
sounds good.
It's a little bit different than our normal, hey, Pastor, have you seen this? But we're going to talk about it, and we're going to check out this video from, is it McClellan? McClellan. So, all right, here we go.
I and the Father are one does not mean Jesus is God.
Okay, that's the
everybody,
big
I'm
claim.
Dan Keller.
I said it does mean that.
You said it does.
John 10:30, Jesus
Is that
says
the verse you
I and
used?
the Father are one.
John
The next
10:30.
verse states that the Jewish folks who were around began to pick up stones to try to stone him for blasphemy.
Yes.
Now, the argument is that the only reason they would have tried to stone him for blasphemy is if he was claiming to be God, and that's just nonsensical. Blasphemy
Let's stop
included
there for a
a
second.
number of different actions.
Okay, we're going to stop there.
Yeah, so he says that's just nonsensical.
Yeah, that
him
Jesus
claiming-
would claim to be God.
But not just that he made the claim, but that is what he clearly meant, because the next thing that happens in the story is that people pick up stones to stone him. So that's used as evidence to say clearly he meant to equate himself with God, because that was such a heretical thing
Yeah, like the punishment is
that it made
definitely-
people go crazy, and then they picked up stones to stone him, and that's part of the argument. He says that's nonsensical.
Okay.
So let's just read the next
Yep.
verse. So I and the Father are one. And then the people picked up stones to kill him. He has got that part right. And then he says, well, look, I did a lot of good things. Why are you trying to kill me? I'm just do good things because the Father's has told me to. They said, we're not stoning you because you do good works. We're stoning you for blasphemy because you, a mere man, claim to be God. That's John 10:33. So right out of the gate, to call that nonsensical is to refute the implication. It's not an implication. The expressed description in the text that his claim to be one with the Father aroused the heretical suspicions of the crowd. They wanted to kill him, and he says, why? Because I do good things? No, because the claim, I and the Father one, equals you, a mere man claiming to be God. So that's what they were picking up. If
He's saying that's what they aren't.
He's saying it's nonsensical that to make the argument that he was implying that he was divine in those comments. Let's keep reading. Let's keep watching.
And words that Jesus could have taken that are not only limited to claiming to being God, claiming equality with God, claiming some kind of special relationship with God, that all fall short of saying, I am God, can also obviously qualify as blasphemy.
So he's saying right here that he's talking about two different things. He's saying that Jesus is actually saying about relationship with the Father,
Yes,
rather than saying that he is the Father.
Yeah, exactly. So like the claim, I and the Father are one, could mean many things, is what he's saying.
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily have to qualify as blasphemy. And again, just to be really clear, he's completely missed the follow-up context, which is that the people picked up the implication. Now, if he's right that that's not what Jesus meant, then what should we read after that? What we should read is something like, whoa, you guys are getting the idea that I'm claiming equality with God. Are you crazy? No, I don't mean that at all. That's what we should get.
Right. The response is, don't kill me,
Yeah,
please.
please don't kill me. You're getting the wrong impression. I mean one in a more esoteric sense. I mean one with the Father in a more relational sense. I mean in whatever sense he's
trying to go for him.
He's going for, yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
Blasphemy, but there's a more clear reason that I and the Father are one does not mean Jesus is God. What does it mean to be one with the Father? Does it necessarily mean that you are part of the same being, a different person within that individual being? Well, we can look in John 17, where Jesus prays 3 times in the intercessory prayer that his followers become one with him just like he is one with the Father. In other words, whatever this oneness is that Jesus shares with God is communicable, and Jesus is explicitly praying for his own followers to achieve oneness with him that is identical to the oneness that he has with the Father. The notion that this oneness means consubstantiality.
Yeah, so there's the argument. So the argument is he can't mean that I am claiming equality with God.
Yeah.
Because
We're not the same person.
he can't mean that because he uses the same terminology in his high priestly prayer where he prays for you and me, that we would be one with him in the same way that he is one with the Father.
Yeah.
And so...
Which was all relational.
Yeah, well, it was. So then, so the question is, are we talking about two different kinds of oneness? One means a oneness of intent, a oneness of affection, a oneness of relationship, versus a oneness of, here's the word, I hope that can be shown on the screen, consubstantiality. In other words, two persons within the same substance of God. All right, so two things to say about this. First of all, I appreciate that he gives John credit. Like, he basically is presuming that John is giving us an accurate representation of Jesus' words.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
He's taking the words of John as authoritative representations of the self-understanding of Jesus. This is how I understand myself, guys. Okay, so that's all good.
That's
then,
great.
If you back up then, and I would say to Mr. McClellan, if you're taking John as an authority on this, then you have to also then ask yourself, is it possible in any universe that the author of this gospel wanted the readers to not understand that Jesus was equal with the Father in a unique sense?
Yeah.
And there you have to just go, then you can go to the whole gospel. So you just don't cherry pick the high priestly prayer and the oneness there. You go to like the very first words in the gospel, which is, in the beginning was the Word.
And the Word was God.
With God, and the Word was God. So does the author of this text, the guy that he clearly considers to be authoritative, he's giving us reliable information about Jesus, does he want us to think that Jesus is merely one with God in a familial sense, the way that we are one with God, or does the author of this gospel clearly want us to believe that Jesus considered himself to be divine in some special way? And I think the answer is, if you take the entire gospel, it is obvious that he wanted in the latter sense, in the special sense.
Yeah, that they were literally one flesh.
Yeah,
one
that they were two persons in the same being. Yeah. So I'm just go to John 8. Okay, same author is describing Jesus here, and again, huge conversation about his self-understanding, right? And what he says in John 8 is, you aren't even 50 years old, and he talks about how he's seen Abraham. So obviously he's talking about pre-existence. Does he think that Jesus or John believe that humans have pre-existence? But Jesus clearly says he has pre-existence. He says, my father Abraham, or your father Abraham, rejoiced as he looked forward to my coming. He saw it and was glad. And they realize that what you're telling us is that you were around when Abraham was around.
Right. Wait a minute.
You were around when Abraham was around. So again, do you think that John means to communicate that the oneness that Jesus claims to have with the Father is just exactly like the familiar relationship that we're supposed to have with the Father, given that he's claiming pre-existence?
Yeah.
Do we have oneness with God in the sense that you and I have pre-existence of our souls? No. I mean, that's nowhere taught in Scripture. I know that some, Christian sects believe that we have pre-existence.
Yeah.
But there's no Christian...
Like Mormonism.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Bible doesn't teach pre-existence anywhere. So Jesus, again, is special in this way. And then look at the very next thing. He says, you aren't even 50 years old. How can you say that you've seen Abraham? And he says, and then this is another stunning claim to divinity. I tell you the truth, before Abraham was even born, I am.
Which is the same language that God used with the bush and Moses.
Exactly.
I am.
Exactly. So the essential meaning of the Hebrew name for God is I am. Yahweh. So again, you have to ask yourself, what is both John and Jesus trying to communicate? If we think that John, who's framing this, he's selecting his anecdotes.
So this guy thinks it's valid.
He thinks that John is giving us an accurate. So does he want us to think that Jesus says, hey, I'm just a dude.
Right.
And I just have a really great relationship with the Father.
And I want you to
have a great relationship with the Father. What I am, you can become exactly like I am. And what you are, I was. I was just a dude like you until I became one with the Father. But you could become one with the Father too.
So
That is
basically saying that more people could become deities.
basically yes. So well, let's keep watching, and then a final comment after he's done.
Substantiality, according to the later developed concept of the Trinity, is nonsensical in light of John 17. That would mean that John 17 is suggesting that all of Jesus's followers would become a part of the Trinity. Now, there are folks who are going to argue that the oneness that is being referred to in John 17 is a different type of oneness that Jesus has with God from the oneness that Jesus asserts with God in John 10. And this is very clearly just a rhetorical dodge, because there are absolutely no data anywhere that support the notion that when Jesus says, I want my followers to be one with me, just like I am one with you, that is something different from the oneness that Jesus asserts.
Right. So, okay, so
When
we talked
Jesus
about,
said-
are they the same type of oneness? Okay, and he says a rhetorical dodge to say, no, they're different kinds of oneness. He says, well, no, that's, how can you say that when he uses the exact same language? Okay, so now I'm going to say something that seems controversial. I'm going to explain it. Okay.
Yeah, I trust you.
So when Jesus says, I and the Father are one, and he prays for the disciples to be one with us in the same way that I'm one with you, Father, okay? Is that closer to meaning, hey, I'm just a dude with a great relationship with God, and I want everybody who follows me to also be just dudes, no special divine status, and to have a special relationship with the Father? Or does he mean, as he's implying, that when Jesus says, I and the Father are one, I share consubstantiality with God. I am a divine being, and I share that, the Godhood with the Father, okay? And therefore, I want my followers to share Godhood with the Father. Okay, I want to say this. This is going to seem very controversial, but I think this has merit. If we had to only pick between those two, it's closer to the second than it is to the first.
Yeah.
So he has, in some sense, I think it right, that when Jesus calls for the oneness of the followers with God to be similar to the oneness that Jesus shares with the Father, that it is closer to say that he is calling us up into the divine nature than it is to say we're all just dudes, including me,
Yeah.
and I just want everyone to have a special relationship with the Father. He is actually promising in this to have us share in the divine nature. Now, that doesn't mean that we become members of the Trinity.
No.
But what it does mean is what the later apostles will say, including the apostle Peter, who says in the first verse of his, I think, second letter, where he says, because we've been given these great promises in the cross, that among them is the promise that we will share in the divine nature. When we get unified with God by grace through the sacrifice of the Lord Jesus, we are called up into the very nature of God, and we get to share in what God is. We share in his perfections. We already know we share his righteousness.
Yeah.
So we're sharing in the righteousness of God, the perfection of God. Paul will say we share in the glory of God. So if we have to pick, that oneness means just a familial oneness, Alex, or a divine kind of oneness, if we only had those two options to pick, we would pick the latter. That actually, yes, Jesus is using oneness in the same way, that he is calling us up into the divine nature in the same way that he has a divine nature.
Yeah.
It's just that
If those are the only two.
there's a third option, I think, which is simply this, that he shares divinity with the Father uniquely, and he wants to bequeath to us a share in the divine nature in that kind of intimate oneness.
Yeah.
So I guess I am kind of arguing that these are different kinds of oneness, but I don't think he means them so radically differently as he implies.
Okay.
As I am one with the Father, this does not mean that Jesus is God.
All right, so I think he's fundamentally wrong about that. And just to go back to the idea of the global picture of John, can you imagine reading John in one sitting, Alex? From Genesis, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, all the way to the end.
Sure.
And have all these statements, I and the Father are one. Before Abraham was born, I am. We're not stoning you for good works. We're stoning you because you claim to be equal with God. And to
In the
think,
beginning was the Word was with God.
yeah, and to think that after all that's done, that
Read the whole thing in one sitting.
and that the impact of this whole thing is that Jesus probably had no uniquely special relationship with God, that he was not considered himself a divine being, but that he was just a dude, and he wanted us to be just dudes with a special relationship with God. I think the answer is, I think that's what's non sequitur. It's just,
for sure.
it does not follow. If you read the entire Gospel of John, John is
He gets that right.
yeah, and John is presenting us a Jesus who considers himself to be uniquely the Son of God.
Yeah.
In a way that is special and set apart from the rest of the human race.
100%.
So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, I think that's something that we always have to take into account is reading the whole thing.
yeah, get all of it, and yeah,
But-
exactly.
Appreciate you commenting on that.
thank you, Alex.
And again, guys, like we love to have conversations. So like if
McClellan.
if he wants to do like a Zoom call,
Yeah.
and we would talk with him. We would
sure.
love to chat with him and all of that. So it's all about conversation. It's all about finding truth, and we believe there is truth out there. So tune in next time and make sure to send us your videos. Social@ac3.org.
ORG. See you next time.